theyeshiva.net.
This is an email I received from a woman in Texas, from all places, and she was listening to all the classes on the last Maimer, Mayim Rabim, Lo Yuchlu L'Chabes Sa'ava from Parshas Noach, about the Mabel and the Teva, and all the Machshavas and the Daigas and the Tirdas. So she wrote to me this email yesterday. I wanted to read it to you because it was extremely moving. After listening to the incredible Maimer, Mayim Rabim, Torah Ohr Parshas Noach, and the classes on it, I'm wondering to myself, what would the state of our children's health on all levels look like if they were fed a steady preventative diet of this wisdom and truth? Not only once they're challenged, but from a very young age at home and in the classroom. How much pain and confusion could be avoided or at least mitigated? To me, this mimer plants the seeds for a kind of unparalleled spiritual intelligence. Imagine if we serve this up as a preamble, as a premise, as a paradigm for all things to come in life. I think more destructive than the actual struggle, which unfortunately mostly cannot be avoided, is the confusion, the loneliness, the self-condemnation. Our kids deserve to hear this from every adult in their life until it's coming out of their ears. As a society, we have become excellent at giving our kids the best opportunities, all the tools, all the skills. But why not the best spiritual tools? Deep insight into their inner world, to a godly reality. Why wait until they already experienced all the pain and confusion and anxiety to give them this life-giving information? Why wait until we have so much damage to undo? Am I being naive? I feel like we're sitting on a treasure that is infinite, and we're not sharing it enough. We're not sharing its language. We're not sharing its tools. We're not sharing its truth with our children. Is it wrong to wonder why these ideas aren't incorporated into the curriculum of our schools, into every home? It's great to be able to read and translate all of these learning texts that we learn. But when so many people, so many children don't have appreciation for the majesty of Judaism and everything they learn is an academic exercise, at best we're losing an opportunity. At worst, we're losing souls. Why are so many of our children reaching adulthood without any kind of profound and vast therapeutic gifts contained in all of these teachings? How many children and youth condemn themselves for their struggles without any sense of just how normal they are? How many of them grow up without any real inner acceptance, without understanding what Judaism is all about? Maybe I'm naive. Maybe that's the journey of life. Maybe we're handed treasures in life and we don't know what we're holding and we just hide them. Maybe we haven't found the right language to bequeath this to our children. I really don't know, but I hope that this can be shared with everybody. These treasures can be shared with everybody. That's the letter. I wanted to share that with you, somebody's feelings from this last mimer that we learned. Huh? You second that. Okay. This is a woman from Texas. So please turn to page 23. On top it says Lech Lecha. In the Hebrew it's Yud Bais, column 1, the last paragraph of the page. Yud Bais, column 1. On top it says Lech Lecha. This is the mimer that begins with the words V'lo Yikara Od Shimcha Avram V'hoya Shimcha Avram ki ava moin goyim nesaticha. Many people, as you'll notice, most of the Maimonim that we learn don't have a date on the top. And the reason is because many of the writers those days, when they wrote down, they didn't think to write when it was said, where it was said, how it was said. They were focusing on the wisdom, on the truth, not on the side details. But it gives another geschmack when you know the details, especially after so many years. So there's another hanacha, there's another transcript of this maimer that was written by somebody else, and there it says the details. So the Baal Tanya said this maimer on a Thursday night. Parshas told us, Tov Kuf Samach Vav, the night before a bris of his grandson, of his great-grandson. The Tzemach Tzedek was the grandson of the Baal Tanya, and he was his daughter's son. He was the third Lubavitcher Rebbe. He took over his father-in-law, the Mittler Rebbe. Tzemach Tzedek had 7 sons. His oldest son was Baruch Sholom, Reb Baruch Sholom. He was born Kislev Tovkov Samach Vav, 1805. The night before his bris, it was Thursday night, Parshas told us, Baal Tanya said a maimer on the bris based on a pasuk in Parshas Lech Lecha. So when the Tzemach Tzedek published Torah, he put this maimer into Parshas Lech Lecha. Reb Baruch Sholom was the oldest son of the Tzemach Tzedek, and happens also to be the great-grandfather of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe's lineage to the Tzemach Tzedek, to the Alter Rebbe, is through Reb Baruch Sholom. So this was set in honor of his bris. That night, Leil Chamishi, I guess I said Thursday night, Wednesday night, Leil Chamishi, Parshas Dovkov Samach Vav, 1805, and it's a maimer on the bris. And essentially, I would say that this maimer reveals what is the secret of a bris, what is it all about. We all know we do it. Every Jew gives a bris, even Jews who are not so into Jewish observance. A bris is something that was maintained by the Jewish people throughout all of the generations, which is an amazing thing. The truth is, today in the Western world, I would say most, or at least even many Gentile families give their children a circumcision. I was asked the other day, somebody asked me this, what's this barbaric custom of circumcising your child? So I said, listen, there's a new king in England who was coronated now. His name is King Charles III. Do you know that he was circumcised by a Jewish male? Nobody forced his mother to do it. His mother wasn't a Jew. She was a queen. It's a few years before she was a queen. She was the king's daughter at the time. But the system in the royal British monarchy is that whenever they had a son, they brought a Jewish male to circumcise him. So Queen Elizabeth and her father, the king, brought the mile from London, a very big mile, to circumcise King Charles III. No, they're also so barbaric. Apparently, they felt circumcision is a good thing, and the Milam are the best ones at it. They have experience that doctors even don't have in this particular area. But, so that's all, the health benefits, okay, that's beyond the realm of the shear. Why would Gentiles do a bris? What are the health benefits of it? What are the physical benefits of it? But the moil is not, a good moil is not worse than a doctor, on the contrary. So, I remember there was once a moil I brought for one of my children, and the same day he had eight brissen. It's a lot of experience after 40 years, 30 years. The night before the bris of my oldest son, who was named after the Tzemach Tzedek and the Rebbe, 22 years ago, so I learned this maimer. And I remember that the bris experience was a different experience after I learned the maimer, what a bris is. Another interesting thing is the Baal Tanya had different people who wrote Maimonim. He didn't write them himself. These Maimonim, he said, he didn't. So there were people who wrote them. Most Maimonim in Torah were written by his brother. Baal Tanya, his name was Reb Shneur Zalman. He had a brother, Reb Yehuda Leib. They called him the Maharil. Maharil, Reb Yehuda Leib. He wrote a sefer called She'eris Yehuda. He was a bigon. And he used to write the Maimonim for his brother, and mostly it's his hanachas, his transcripts. But most of them were written by many other people. The Baal Tanya had around 5 writers. He had a son, the Mittler Rebbe, who succeeded him, Reb Dov Ber, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe. He wrote Maimonim. He had another son, Reb Moshe, his youngest son, also wrote. His grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, also wrote. He had another Talmud called Reb Aaron Strasheller, Reb Aaron Alevi Horowitz also wrote. He had a Talmud called Reb Pinchas Roises, Reb Pinchas Shklover, Rosh HaKolim. She was a very chashuv yid, also a very big Talmud Chacham. He also wrote. And so some of them, you have transcripts from 5 different people. You have his brother, and you have 2 sons, and you have the Tzemach Tzedek, sometimes you even have 6 people. So this Maimer happens to be written by many people. Here you have the one that was written by his brother, Reb Yehuda Leib, who was obviously there at the time of the bris, and in Liadi, the city of Liadi. You have the Hanacha, the transcript that was written by his son Reb Moshe, that's printed in my Mari Admir Azak and Tovkov Samach Vav, 1805, 1806, because that's where the Maimarim are. You have a transcript written by the Alter Rebbe, which is printed in the Siddur of the Balatanya, which has explanations around it on the section of Bris. And you have the Maimir that was written, I think, by Rabbi Aaron of Starsheller, another student. So it's interesting. This morning I was learning last night, this morning I was learning different of the Maimonim. So you could see exactly, they're all writing what he said, but everyone, it's filtered through the way they understand it, but you see the different Maimonim, you get explanations, more insight, because, when you have a few people writing down the same shir, the same Maimir, you get more clarity, more depth. Sometimes a person catches this detail, the other person doesn't catch, etc. Okay, so let's begin. The Reb Baruch Sholom tells Avram Avinu at the age of 99 to give himself, to circumcise himself, to remove his arla, to remove the foreskin and give himself a bris. And he says after that he receives a name change. Your name will not be Avram anymore, your name will be Avraham. And he says, what's the difference? Avram has within it an extra hey. So it's not Avram, it's Avraham. So he says, Ki av hamoin goyim nesaticha. Now I have coronated you, I have conferred upon you a new status. You are the father of hamoin goyim, of multitudes of nations. Hamoin means the masses, the many people. Avram, we'll soon see what the difference is, but literally the hey, so now you have hey mem is hamoin. So you're an Av, you were an Av before, but now you're not just a father, you're Av Hamoin Goyim Nesaticha. You're now a father over the multitudes of nations. Ham, Avraham, Hamoin, you're from the Hamoin Goyim. You could now father and mentor multitudes of peoples and cultures and nations and so forth. In other words, in simple words, after the Bris Milah, now you can really have an impact on the world. You can have an impact on all the nations. The question is why? What's the connection? So literally it looks like, you did what I said, this is going to make you wholesome and complete, so you're elevated to a new level. But the question is, why the bris? Why circumcision? How does that affect anything? So you might say, well, that's what Hashem wants, stop asking questions. But this Maimir really explores what this whole idea is. How does it change his status? Ha'inyan, the explanation is, hatam le'milah. What's the whole idea behind Milah, the reason for it? Tiksiv, asher bara elokim lasas l'sak. What is he asking here? There's a big question that's raised in the Medrash. He's going to discuss it in a moment. He's going to quote it in a moment. I'm just going to say it now so you'll appreciate what he's saying. The Medrash says, this is in Parshas Bereshis, Parsha Yud Aleph, I think, that a philosoph, that's what the Shol Philosophos, a philosopher asked one of the great sages, one of the great Rabbi. The question is, if Hashem wants a person to be circumcised, a child to be circumcised, he could have created him that way. No, he creates him with an arla, with a foreskin. And then you decide, he tells you, 8 days, remove it. Don't give me the arla, you don't remove it. They say with the wisdom teeth, right? Don't give me the wisdom teeth. I want to have to remove the wisdom teeth. I understand if somebody is born and they develop and there's an infection, something you have to. But you're born this way. Every healthy child, you have exceptions. People who are born without an arla. It says Moshe Rabbeinu was born mohol. God was born mohol. Adam Arishan was born mohol. It's brought in Chazal. I had an uncle, he just passed away. He was born Mahol. His name was Shalom, my father's brother. He was born Zayin Adar, the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was born already after a bris.
So they didn't do brit?
You do hatafas dam, a little blood, yeah. My Zayda, his father, Reb Simon was his name, was a moil, so he did it on him. Yeah. Tafshin Zayin, 1947, in Pucking, Germany, in the DP camps, the displaced person camps. But he was born, he was Taka Tzaddik. It says in Medrash that Tzaddikim are born without the foreskin. You'll soon see why. He was Taka, he was a very edel in neshama. I said at his Levaya, I told his son, he came into this world clean, and he left like he came in. He left with the same cleanliness. So this is the question they asked him. Most people are not born that way. So what's this idea? So the Balatanya says the Ksiv is a pasuk. This says about Shabbos. Asher bara lekim lasses. We say it Friday night in the Kiddush and after by davening. Remember, Vayichulu Hashemayim v'aretz v'chol tzvam. Hashem finished all his work. Vayichal lekim b'yom hashri malachta asher asa. Right? Vayikadesh oisa. He blessed the day. He sang about Ki voy shavas mikol malachtoi. Listen. Asher bara elikim lasses. On that day, Hashem rested from all the work that He created. You hear the word lasses? It fits in, doesn't fit in. Mikol malachta asher bara elikim. In English, He rested from all the work that He created to do. What do you mean, all the work He created to do? What's to do? So the Balatanya says that word lasses is everything. He didn't create a world that's complete. He created a world where you have to do. You understand? Sometimes you create a project that's done. Sometimes you create a model that now needs to be improved. It has to be worked with. It's a template. You have what to work with, right? You have what to work with. A real teacher, a real mentor doesn't just create the product. Now you have what to work on. Asher bara elikim, kol malachta, asher bara elikim, lasses, to do. So the Medrash says one word, lasos, l'sake. What mean to do? To fix, to repair. It says in Parshas Kiseitze, v'asasas tziporneh. She will do her nails. I mean, do the nails. So today, Taka, there's an expression, I'm going to do my nails, right? Some of you pay for it. What does it mean, do? V'asasa. So the Mefarshim say, v'tikna. Asiyas miloshin tikun. Fixing, repairing. I want to enhance the nails or whatever else you're doing. Asher bara elikim lasos l'saken. So it's not that tikkun is a mistake. It's like, oh, I'm messed up. No, that was the creation. Right away on Shabbos it says the beginning, Asher bara elikim, whatever He created is lasos, is only the beginning to be able to repair, to be able to be a masaken. And that's a key element in life because, right? Like this woman wrote, how do you see your struggles? If you're expecting to be complete and wholesome, so then when you encounter the lack of completion, it creates unnecessary pain, unnecessary anguish and anxiety. When a person understands that a chelik of the essential to the fabric of creation is asher bara elikim lasos l'saket, so it's an invitation, it's an empowerment. Here it is, and now fix it up. Fix it up. Shadayin tzarich tikun aydei ha'adam. The world still needs to be repaired. L'saken olam, like we say in Aleinu. L'saken olam, tikun olam. What do they call it? Tikun olam. You ever heard that expression? Tikun olam. It comes from Aleinu. L'saken olam. They don't say the last two words, but malchus shindalad yud. In Russia, there was an organization in the early 1800s. It was called Bilu. Bilu is Bais Yaakov Lechu v'Nelcha. Bais Yaakov Lechu v'Nelcha. So the Reb Marash said if they would have added two words, Ba'od Hashem, he would have taken 1 million Jews from Russia and gone to Israel. So L'saken, there's an avoid of tikkun. Ki agam shekvar bara lekim asa Adam, even though Hashem created Adam, loy bara b'shleimus. Don't think that it's a complete bria. It's full. You're done. You're done. They once asked a woman how her marriage is. So she said, before I was married, I was incomplete. Now I'm married and I'm finished. So don't think it's really the same thing. When you're complete, you're also finished. Don't think you're a finished product. You're not finished. It's the beginning. He created the bria. Now starts the work, starts the tikkun. Medrash Rabbi. This is stated in Medrash Rabbi, Parshas Bereshis, Parsha Yud Aleph. Sheshal ala Milah. There was a philosopher, a non-Jewish philosopher, who asked one of the Tanoim about Milah. Im chaviva hi Milah lama nivra adam aral. This was his question. If Hashem loves Milah, He wants Avram Avinu to do it. He wants Avram Avinu to continue it in his family forever, all the generations. And this is the covenant. This creates the bris. The bris with Avram Avinu, right? It says that Milah is Yud Gimel brises. The Rambam says, G'doylehi Milah on Torah, there's 3 brises. On a Milah, there's 13 covenants, it says in Chumash, because of the Bris Milah. So if it's so cherished, why did he create the person Arel without a Bris? V'hoisat tshuva. So Reb Hoshia answered him, Kol ma shenivre b'sheishes me'bereishis tzichem asiyah v'tikun. He gave him an example. He gave him an example from something called turmusin. The Medrash says turmusin was a type of bean, a very bitter bean, a legume that was very popular in the times of the Gemara in the Middle East. But you couldn't eat it. But you had to cook it 7 times. You had to re-cook it 7 times, and then it was a geschmack shebe geschmack. 7 times. So he said, I don't understand. If it's such a good food, why doesn't it grow edibly? He gives the example of wheat. Wheat grows. What do you do with wheat? You have to harvest the wheat. Then you have to extract the kernel. And then you have to grind it into flour. Right? It's a big avoid. And then you knead the flour with water. And then you bake it and you have bread. I don't understand. If lechem is the staple food, lechem levav and yizod, so why is it not created that way? Huh? There's another story with Rabbi Akiva. This is with Rabbi Shia. And the Medrash over there, it's Rabbi Shia, I think. Huh? Oh. So you wonder, what was the philosopher thinking? He doesn't know. We build homes. Are we created with homes? Deer don't build homes. Even, yeah? I mean, animals sometimes have their little, the birds create their nests, and the groundhogs have their caves, and the bears hibernate in their caves. Why do they do it? To protect themselves. So nobody does, but nature doesn't do it for them. They do it. Human beings build homes, ganzene homes. Why don't we just live outside? We create clothes. Why do we create clothes? Adam and Chava decided at some point we have to have clothes. You're saying it's a pashta thing, right? We eat with forks and knives. Why? We build bathrooms. Why? Right? Why not just be like your puppy before he's trained? We even have doctors. We learn medicine. Why? Person gets sick, let them be sick. In other words, l'chayr tzapela, what's his question? All of nature we constantly improve on, right? We try to prolong life. We try to heal disease. We develop food. If not, we would starve. There are fruits that are ready. You can eat an apple, you can eat a grape, you can eat a blueberry. But many of the greatest foods, right, beginning with the grains, yeah, either you have to cook, or you have to sweeten, or you have to develop, like wheat. So you're saying, what's the shaila? Huh? Good, Frek's good. Frek's good. But that was his answer. So you're saying Hashem wants Milah, why did he create you an Arel? He said, why did he create Turmusin the way they're Turmusin? And the answer is, Kamaya Turmusin, everything that was created in Sheshis and Mebereshis, it's version 1. But Tzrichim Asiyah V'tikun. It still needs Lassos. Ashabar Elikim, the intention was Lassos. It should be repaired, it should be healed, it should be fixed, it should be developed. That was his answer. So a person was created Arel. A person also needs tikkun. Part of the tikkun is removing the Arel. To understand what's the depth of the mashal and how is it comparable to the nimshal. What's his question? I understand that a turmus, those beans are bitter, I can't eat them. But what's wrong if a person has a foreskin? I understand if a person had something that simply they couldn't function. Their life was bitter, so you have to remove it. I get it. I want to eat bread, I need to develop the grain. I want to eat the turmusin, I need to cook them. But here, what's wrong if you leave it? Why? What's the mashal? You decided that Arla is a bad thing, it's a bitter thing. Maybe, why? You don't see a person is born with something that stops them, that obstructs them. There's people who never had a bris and they function as people. That's the question. What's much more stable in nimshal? Hine noida, it's known. Maimer, what we say in the morning, the statement of Chazal in the davening. This is not a pasuk. That's why he says Maimer. It's a statement of the Chazal, the Anshe Knesses Hagdayla, and Birchas Krishma. Hamachadish betuvay b'chol yom tabed masa bereshis. You know, every Maimer goes back to the beginning. Hamachadish betuvay, he creates with his goodness every day, constantly every day, not just every morning, every day, constantly. Masa bereshis is the work of creation. What does this mean? It means Tamid hu achidush yesh me'ayin. When you say the word chidush, chidush means new. The Ramban writes in Bereshis, when it says bara, Bereshis bara, in Hebrew, bara is yesh me'ayin. Yesh me'ayin means something, literally from nothing, or from no thing. In Latin, they call it ex nihilo, for those of you who took Latin in yeshiva. Ex nihilo. Don't worry, I also didn't. Lenny, you took Latin, no? I'm sure you took Latin. You're still learning Latin, right? Nice to have you back. Since Corona. First time. Ruchim Abayim. It's been a few years. So, Hamachadish Betuvi B'chol Yom Tamid Maaseh Bereshis means not, here's the question, what's bothering him? What if Chiddush is Yesh Me'ayin? That's not happening every moment. It's the same world, right? The same, let's say he's recreating me, he's recreating you, but it's the same person. It's not like when I recreated, I'm born again from new. The same age, the same age I was a moment ago, I still am. I'm a little older. So it's called Hamsheichiyut. The world can, there's halachas of we were once sitting at a shiur, we were learning with Rabbi Elkan. So we were learning about the creation every moment. So somebody said, so why is there a din of Sher Hamuad? the ox was recreated. Why? Sher Hamuad means it gored 3 times. So now Hashem recreated it. So it's a new ox. It never gored. So he said all the dinim of chazaka you should also throw out the window. You're in this house for 3 years. Cheskas Sabatim. You're not in the house for 3 years. You're just now in the house for... But it's not a question. When you say Hashem recreates the world, Mazel tov, yeah? The Rekachava held that a wedding happens every moment in halacha. Nisuyin happens every moment. So he told it to Reb Chaim Briski, wanted to answer. Reb Chaim Briski didn't like this svara. So Reb Chaim Briski, how did he tell him he doesn't know? He says, Mazel tov. He says, what's the Mazel tov? He says, you just got married. The Mazel tov. He got married many years before. Mazel tov, that was his way. So what's the vart? Right. So when it says Hamachadesh, he says, I can understand if you tell me. The answer, of course, to these questions is Hashem recreates the world in a continuum fashion. Yeah, if I'm 4 years old, I'm still going to be 4 years old. I'm not born again, and whatever I learned till that point, it's accumulated. It's a hemshech. But the Balatanya is medayik here. We say Hamachadesh betuvi b'chol yom tamid maaseh bereshis. What's mechadesh? Mechadesh is yesh me'ayin. Something from nothing. That's not mechadesh betuvi b'chol yom tamid. You're continuing the yesh that was before. You could say that the yesh would have become ayin, so you're recreating that yesh again. But l'chayre, the chiddush, it's not new. Now, there's different answers to this question, but here he gives an interesting beer. V'inyan is havos yesh v'gashmi me'ayin v'ruchni iyef shaliyas kach. The emergence of a yesh and a gashmi from an ayin and a ruchni can just be, it's not a simple process. Rak ayidei b'chinas mashakosov v'hivdila hapareiches lachem bein hakodesh ben kodesh hakadosh. When you say the word ayin, what does ayin mean? We translate ayin as nothingness. That's not really what it means. Here he says yesh gashmi, ayin ruchni, right? Yesh v'gashmi me ayin v'ruchni. That really tells you what ayin is. Ayin doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Ayin means it's a different type of existence that relative to the yesh, it's called ayin because it's not registered by the properties of the yesh. You understand what I'm saying? It sounds more complicated. It's not so complicated. I mean, it's complicated, but it's not so complicated in the sense of, till 120 years ago, till 130 years ago, they didn't know that there's a concept called a virus, or fungi, or bacteria, or germs, or infections. In the 1300s, tens of millions of people died in Europe. Complete societies were wiped out. They didn't know about viruses, bacteria, germs, infections. They blamed it on the devil and, of course, on the Jews. It's always a good people to blame. The Jews poisoned the wells. It's called the Black Plague. They didn't know. So they had to find all of these types of explanations. In the 1800s in Vienna, there was a famous story. Woman after woman after woman who was giving birth was dying. And Dr. Semmelweis came up with the idea that the doctors were killing them because they went from autopsies to giving birth, to helping the women give birth without washing their hands. So he blamed the doctors, so they put him into a mental institution, an asylum, where he was beaten to death. 10, 20 years later, he was vindicated. At the moment, he was the scoffing of society. Because you talk about things that we don't see with our eyes, it doesn't exist. That's called ayin. Today we know that whatever you see with your eyes probably doesn't really exist. Usually the most important fundamental aspects of existence you don't see with your eyes. For example, atoms are pretty important. Cells, DNA, electrons, fungi, bacteria, germs, viruses. Nobody ever sees these with their eyes. That means it doesn't exist. What you see with your eyes is that which is tzimtzum after tzimtzum. It was restricted. The frequencies of light are so restricted that your retina, your eye, can pick it up with its sensors, and your brain interprets it as so and so. It's actually a very diluted form of existence. You hear what I'm saying? What we call ayin doesn't mean it's not. It means it doesn't register in my kalim, in my tools. I don't register it as something. That's why he calls it yesh v'gashmi v'ayin v'ruchni. But what you can see is usually much more important than what you could see. Because what you could see is already a reality the way it's condensed in a form that your eyes can pick them up. The fundamental properties of existence, the yesodus of existence, are not something we pick up with our eyes. We simply don't have the tools for them. That's a mashal. I'm giving a mashal for ayin. So you say it's nothing. It's not nothing, it's everything. What's the ultimate ayin? Ultimate ayin is a lakus. Godliness, a lakus, that's ayin. Why is it called ayin? Because it's nothing. Nothing means no thing. It's not defined as a thing that my eyes are going to say, oh, I see God. Right? There was a famous astronomer in France. He once said that he has the access to the best telescope at the time, and he looked everywhere and he didn't find God. Anyway, he looked between the stars and the galaxies and the planets. Et gesucht umetum, God was nowhere, obviously doesn't exist. So there was a big violinist in France then, and he said that he took his violin and he took it apart. And he took apart the violin, particle after particle after particle, and he did not find music. He did not find music. He was using a telescope, he was using a microscope. He didn't find God in the telescope, and he didn't find music with the microscope. Why not? Isn't a violin all about music? You have to build a sukkah. I have an idea. Instead of taking a hammer and taking the nails and putting the nails into the sukkah, why don't you give a shear to the nails? Explain to the nails that Sukkot is coming and it's a big mitzvah. Somehow my nails never respond to that. I tried. I tried standing in my sukkah and giving a shear. Instead, he didn't speak to the rock. Yeah? Instead, I asked a friend to come help build a sukkah, and instead he did most of the work because I'm not so good at it. He did all of the work, sorry. If you'll ask the nail, why don't you respond? The nail say, I don't know what you're talking about. The nail understands the language of the hammer. The nail doesn't understand the language of the shear. Words for a nail is ayin. Now, between you and me, if you want to talk to a person, how could you influence a person more, with a hammer or with words? I know some people think with a hammer, but it's whenever it says kach, whenever it says in Chumash, take somebody, kach es Aaron, kach es Yeshua, Rashi always says, bidvarim, with words. How does Rashi know? Maybe take them with your hands. How does Rashi know? Kach es Aaron, bidvarim. Kach es Yeshua, bidvarim. How does Rashi know? Maybe with a hammer. The Chaim Sofer writes, because if you take a person, physically you didn't take the person. You took their hands. You didn't take the person. You understand? He says, fakert. The person inside is rebelling. So they're actually more distant from the place you wanted to take them to. You force your child to come to shul. You force him. You took him, he's there. Chaim says actually he's much less there than if you wouldn't take him. He's less there because his heart is like never again, you know? The second I grow up, I'm out of here. I'm not giving a rule about, you have to understand your relationship with your child, but the point is, forcing somebody to do something doesn't mean they're doing it. It looks like they're doing it. They're doing it with their hands, they're not doing it with their soul. And they have a soul, people have minds. So the moment they grow up and they start using their minds and you're off their back, it's gone. You have to be very careful. I took him to shul. Really? You took him to shul? You took his suit to shul. He happens to be in his suit, so he was schlepped. That's why Rashi says, take bidvarim. For the nail, a hammer is very good. For the person, words are much more powerful. Why? Because a person's mind hears words. My soul listens to words. And if you inspire me rather than force me, you'll touch me. You'll touch me. And if you touch me, then I'll be there. If you don't touch me, I won't be there. When religion speaks in the name of dogma only, rather than in the name of compassion, it loses its real power. When religion speaks in the name of coercion and punishment, rather than in the name of connection and attachment and depth, it loses its power. So what's ayin? What's ayin? Ayin means nothing, but it's not nothing, it's no thing. So the Balatanya says the process of a world coming from ayin to yesh is not a simple process. How does the divine energy become concretized in a world that my eyes and your eyes can pick up as yesh? It has to become a gashmi. Does you understand what that metamorphosis is? And by the way, I should say this line contains every struggle and question in modern physics and science. How does consciousness become matter? And how does quantum physics, which is absolute insanity in terms of the paradoxes, how does it turn into a world that seems like it makes sense? Particles that are moving in two opposite directions simultaneously, and yet when you observe them, they collapse into a fixed, predictable model. Essentially, what they're touching on is the journey from a place of ayin to a place of yesh, from a place of infinity, from a place of paradox, to a place of fixed, concrete models that I could look at and pick up. Anybody knows what I'm talking about? Because I don't. I'm just using the oisius. You mean the child, the 8-day-old child?
This motion was the first trauma.
Oh, that's a good question. You mean how you do it? Okay, so that's a general question, but
No, but I'm saying in terms of what you just said.
right. Let's say chas v'shalom. Right, chas v'shalom. If a child is born with a heart defect or another disease, right, without asking the infant, we're going to do everything we can, including a surgery, to try to heal them. In other words, if parents are convinced that this is a good thing for the child, we're going to do it even without asking the child, because we can't ask the child. Obviously, if the child was 30 years old, he'll have to do it. An adult has to, the kid has to choose the bris. I know of many Russian Jews who had a bris as adults, and it's incredible to me when I meet them. It's really incredible. But at that young age...
No, I thought the teretz was that there's some things that you have to force.
Oh, yeah, I mean, an 8...
Because he has no doubt.
Right, exactly. In every generation, more truth comes out. The Malbim writes in Ashrei, it says, Dor l'dor yeshabach ma'asecha. We say it every day. Here's an amazing idea from the Malbim. You know the Malbim was, yeah? Malbim is Rosh Tevis, Meir Leibish ben Yechiel Michel. Malbim. Meir Leibish ben Yechiel Michel. He was one of the Gaonim, tremendous Gaon. He lived in the 1800s. He was the Rav of Romania until they expelled him. And his commentary on Chumash and Tanakh is something special. And he wrote many, many, many other svarim. He was a really brilliant man. So he writes a lot about science. So he writes, Dor l'dor yeshabach ma'asecha literally means, generation to generation, we will praise your actions. But the word yeshabach in Gemara means when something is improved. Right? Uman koina b'shvach keli. Shvach doesn't only mean praise. Shvach means something becomes better and better. right? You say, ha'itzoyes, hashvach meruba la'itzoyes. You invested an amount of money and then it went up. The price went up. It says, what's dor ledor yeshabach ma'asecha? God, every day he learns more. So he says, generation to generation, yeshabach ma'asecha, we get to see much more and much better the brilliant intricacies of creation. In every generation, yeshabach ma'asecha, we have a whole different, superior appreciation. They used to think a cell is simple. For a cell to emerge randomly, what's the big deal? Right? It's a few tissues coming together. Today, when you know what's in a cell, it's like OMG and not oh my Google. It's like, oh, really? The more we develop new instruments of comprehension and of vision, you see that the world, there's nothing that's simple. Whatever you thought was simple is so complex that 15 billion years of billions of monkeys jumping on billions of computers won't even produce one sentence of what's contained in a cell. In the olden days, they didn't think that. It's simple stuff. They didn't have the instruments. It's not that they were wrong. From Yesh perspective, I could only see certain things. I don't see a cell. I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. But today you know that's everything. That's the fundamental building blocks of your body. The genome, the code of the genome is the blueprint of your whole body. Right? And the sequence gives the exact instructions how the body should be built. It's incredible. A little change in sequence of the DNA is call it it's a genetic disease, so sometimes it could be catastrophic for generations. The difference between me and a chimpanzee, do you think there's a difference? You know how much percent? Right? Like 2%. Halavai. Like 99% and change, we're like chimpanzees. We share 50% of our genetic makeup with bananas. Do you ever look at a banana and see yourself? Well, you should, 50%. I happen to like bananas, I don't mind. But the point is that so in every generation, more and more truth is perceived. It says in Zohar, last week's Parsha, B'shnas sheish meyes shana l'chaye Noach. On the 600th year of the life of Noach, Nifku kol mayonas tahim rabba v'arubas hashamayim niftachu. All the well springs from below opened up, and the windows of heaven opened up. So the Zohar says, B'shnas, I quote, 5,000 years, and sheish meyes shana, hey alafim tafresh, 5,600 years, hey alafim tafresh, there's going to be Nifku kol mayonas tahim rabba. All the chachmas ha'olam are going to burst open in an incredible way, and arubas hashamayim and pnimiyus ha'torah from heaven is also going to come down like a marble into the world. Hey alafim tafresh, b'shnas sheish meyes shana l'chaye Noach. It happens to be Torah Ohr was published 6 years before Tafresh, and Likutei Torah 8 years after. Generally, the whole Gilui of Torah Chassidus, of Torah Baal Shem Tov, after Kabbalah, came out during that century, literally that century. The Baal Shem Tov passed away Tov Kuf Chof, Baal Tanya passed away Tov Kuf Ayin Gimel, and all the Chachmei Chassidus, that was a generation. And the whole scientific industrial revolution was literally those years. Because Hey Alafim Tafresh was 1840. If you look at the dates, 1840, the way the world changed from 1840 till today, it hasn't changed in 5,700 years. And the Zohar says this is all a preparation for the for Elef Hashvi. This is the 6th millennium. It's a preparation for Yom Shekul Shabbos U'Menucha L'Chayei Lama. And also more open, both. It works both ways. Okay, so now let's get back to the Inyan. So you have to understand what creation is. Creation, and Hashem created a world, abracadabra kadu. Creation is a process every moment where ayin has to become yesh. What's an ayin has to become? Everything is a lakus, everything is divine energy. DNA is divine and cells are divine, amino acid is divine, oxygen is divine, every atom is divine, all the everything is divine energy. But divine energy I don't pick up, I don't touch. It becomes yesh, it becomes concretized. How does that happen? So the Balatanya says you have to understand how it happens. So he uses a pasuk here about how the Mishkan was built and the Beis Hamikdash. V'ivdila paroiches lechem ben hakodesh ben hakodesh hakadosh. There had to be a paroiches, a curtain, between the Holy of Holies and the Holy. Now here is a klal in Kabbalah and Chassidus and Bechlal Svarim of Machshava. The Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash were a model of the cosmos. Why is the Torah become so intricate about every detail in the Mishkan? You ever read Truma, Tetzaveh, Vayakel, Pkudei? You ever study these things well? Most people shut down right away, yeah? Unless you're an architect. Once you're a mitzvah pasha, then you have no choice. Yeah, then they pull you, they schlep you with their hands. Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Literally the beams, right? The pegs. The truth is, it's very interesting. But more than that, there's a whole Sefer Torah Ohr by the Ramah. It's a model for the cosmos. Every measurement, door, gate in the Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan is a mirror of the world. So that's what he's going to explain here. The paroiches between the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Kodesh. Why is there a curtain? You say you didn't want people to see inside. You didn't want people to go inside. He says it's much deeper than that. The Gemara even says that the Beis Hamikdash had Yud Gimel paroiches, 13 different curtains. Different gates, every gate had 13 different curtains. The big curtain, the famous curtain, is between the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Kodesh. Hivdila ha-paroiches lechem. Later they had, in Bais Rishon, was called an amatraxin, a wall. Beis Hamikdash Hasheni, they had two paroiches, but there was a paroiches. Ki Beis Hamikdash, Sham haya makar hashpa v'gilui hashchina b'kodesh hakadosh. The Beis Hamikdash was the source of the flow and the revelation of the Shechina in Kodesh HaKadosh and V'liyas hashpa nimshach misham alahala. For the flow to continue from there outward, lo haya idei gilui kol kach, it couldn't be through the same intense level of revelation. Ki im kein haya hakoil echad. Because if it would be, everything would be oneness. If infinity is manifested in its full intensity, everything is echad, everything is one. There's no polarization, there's no diversity. Because what's infinity, what's Ein Sof? Ein Sof is everything. So if Kodesh HaKadoshim, over there was the Gili, there was the revelation of infinity. If that would just continue without any interruption, without any filter, without any censors, without any restrictions, everything would be one, and everything would be oneness. The light flows, but only through a partition. Masach is a curtain, a veil that separates. It's not just a physical paroiches. It's a curtain, so you shouldn't just walk in. Tznius, modesty, obviously that too. He said it's a model, it represents something. The light flows through, but only through a veil. Between Kodesh HaKadoshim and Kodesh. Kodesh HaKadoshim is the Holy of Holies, and Kodesh is what's called the Heichal. The inner sanctuary of the Beis Hamikdash, where the Menorah was, the Mizbeach was, the Shulchan was. It was still holy. Only Kohanim went in there usually. But it's not the Kodesh HaKadoshim, only Kohen Gadol went in once a year. Upareiches tirgim unkulus parsa. Very interesting. If you look in the works of Kabbalah and Chassidus, especially by the Balatanya, the word parsa is very common. Also in the writings of the Arizal. Parsa. He says, what's parsa? Parsa is the Aramaic translation of paroiches. Parsa is a partition, a veil, a paroiches. You say the paroiches, a curtain. It is a paroiches. There wasn't one paroiches. There were many and many types. Fascinating. All the evolutions from world to world, what makes, you speak in Kabbalah and Chassidus about different worlds. What does it mean different worlds? Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, Pritzim, some Postim, some other. What are these things? If you take a rocket ship, you're going to fly and bump into Yitzira, 1 billion light years away, then you'll bump into Bria, 20 billion light years, then you'll bump into... It doesn't work that way. It's states of consciousness. Atzilus is here, but everything is here. Hishtalshalus, it means what's perceived as reality. Every paroiches creates a new world. Every curtain, every spiritual creates a new type of consciousness. It's even in the human brain that way, right? How many parochas do you have in your brain filtering your subconscious into your conscious? Some people have one parochas, some people have, I'm laughing, millions of parochas. And how thick is your parochas? Something comes through. Something comes through. But how much am I aware of? You know, people say, I would love more awareness. Really? It's not so simple. Awareness comes with a price. The truth is, the ultimate awareness is Hakol Echad, everything is one. So every parochas creates a new world. What makes this world Bria, this world Yitzira? It's a different feeling of self-consciousness, a different definition of reality. Why? Because the light comes through a whole new curtain. So it's a different type of energy. What's the difference between a squirrel and a tiger and a hyena and the black hole and me? So scientists love saying it's all the same. It's all the same. The fundamental, we know, we all know instinctively that it's not the same. It's a shtus, right? They want to say, everything is just, you came from me. They're right and they're wrong. It's all the same thing because it's divine energy. But it's all different because everyone has their own parechas. When a squirrel looks in the mirror, what is he seeing? Often animals don't necessarily have that self-consciousness, right? That awareness of I. When you look in the mirror, what are you seeing? It's all based on the parechas. Every world comes from a different type of curtain. V'zeu inyan hamechadish betuve, she'ishavus me'ayin liyeshu aydei chidish. We said before, the world is recreated every moment as a continuation. But the very emergence from ayin to yesh is a chiddush. What's the chiddush here? The oir of the yesh is called a davar chadash. The hainu aydei masach o parsa nasa oir chadash oir shel tulda ve'einze mimuhus oir hadishin. If you have a light that's burning in your room and you create a curtain, right? Or you have the light of the sun coming to your window, but you have a curtain coming down. Is there light going to come into the room? Yeah. But it's not the same light that's on the other side of the curtain. It's called Ur Shel Tulda. What does Ur Shel Tulda mean? It's a child of the original light. And what if you put a second curtain? The light may come through, but it's a different light. And literally, it has different properties, different qualities. It looks different. It has a different... Sometimes you could put a curtain that completely blocks the light. But we all have curtains or blinds that eclipse part of the light, filters the light, and the light on the other side, it's not the same light. What does that mean spiritually? That the Ribbono Shel Olam, where as he creates the worlds, he creates a Seder Ishtalshelus, where every level has a different parochas, and that creates a new type of Ur. That's Mechadish. Then Ur, Legabi, the previous Ur, it's a new light. It's an Ur Shel Tud. It's like a child. The child comes from Tati and Mami, but the child is not the father and the mother. It's a new Metzias. You come from your father and mother. You're right, you come from your father and your mother. You continue your father and mother's gene pool. You continue your father and mother's legacy, but you come with your own baggage, with your own identity. That's called Ur Shel Tulda, the child. It's a continuation of the first light, but it's also a new light. And it's a completely new light. That's why it's called HaMechadish B'Tuva. So every moment is that Mechadish B'Tuva B'chol Yom Tamid, because that process is inherent in order to create concretization of divine infinity. As the light continues to descend and evolve, Nasa Oid Parsa. There's another partition, and another one, and another one. Until the partition that allows there to be a Olam Gashmi, where divinity is concretized into what we call the material world. You understand what type of parsa that needs? That the divine energy has to go through such a filter that what is it? I call it a table, I call it a coffee bean, I call it a plant, I call it a shrub, I call it a worm, a flamingo, a giraffe, or a zebra, or a banana. It becomes a Gashmizdika world. That's called Seder Hishtalshelus. Whenever you see the word Seder Ishtalshalos, the process of Ishtalshalos, the process of evolution, the process of the chain of creation, what is this chain? It's not just a chain, a rung after a rung after a rung. It's a parsa after a parsa after a parsa. It's a paroichis after a paroichis, a veil after a veil. And after each veil, there's a new caliber of light, which creates a new consciousness, which creates a new world, which creates a new creation. And every creature has its own paroichis. That creates the diversification. And every world, of course, has its own paroichis. If you go pre-paroichis, Kodesh HaKadoshim, Hakal Echel, everything is one. But because it goes through these partitions, so the first paroichis is between Kodesh HaKadoshim and Kodesh, but then there's many other paroichis, because each world in Ishtalshalos has a different paroichis, which creates the type of creation that exists in that world. And therefore they have different sensitivities. How many blockages are there? How many blockages are there? How many cover-ups are there? How many filters? You have souls, for example. In Kabbalah, it speaks about souls from Atzilus, souls from Bria. It says the Rambam's soul came from Bria. Rashbi's soul came from Atzilus. You have souls from Yitzir. What does this mean? Souls from here? What do you mean souls? It means this soul, how many antennas does your soul have? What do you pick up? Different antennas pick up different frequencies. Doesn't mean they're not here. Right? With the cell phones, they have something called a dead zone. It doesn't pick up anything. You don't have the kalim to pick anything up. You have souls that their antennas are rooted in Atzilus. That's the frequency they pick up. They see the world with different glasses. You have souls, their antennas come from Bria, the different paroichis. And you have to respect it's a completely different reality. We're both living in the same world, but we're not living in the same world. When Moshe Rabbeinu was talking to Parai, it was Atzilus talking to Sholosh Klippas Hatmeyas. Somebody who was in a transparency talking to somebody who lived in shells. Two people talking, but they're not in the same place. Whenever you're talking to your spouse, the first question you have to ask before what you're talking, are we in the same world? Because if not, if your antennas are here and my antennas are there, I don't hear what, it's not the same language, you understand? Have a conversation with a flamingo. You ever tried? You ever want to talk to the birds in your backyard? I always try to talk to the birds. You want to, right? There's only one problem. They don't see what I see. They see what I don't see. They hear what I don't hear. I hear what they don't hear. So there's the selbe Welt. So you talk to them, and then they just fly on you. Where's the fly away? Where's der Eretz? During Corona, right, nobody went to shul. And they left. During Emes. It says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, right? He knew Sichas Oife, Sichas Kolam. He could speak to palm trees. He could listen to palm trees. I can't listen to palm trees. Why? Not because they don't talk. I don't have the tools to hear them talk. So I say, palm trees, they're stupid. They don't have what to say. Really? Just because you can't hear the shir doesn't mean they don't have what to say. It means you're ADD, you're ADHD. So that's it. Palm trees are not ADHD. They sit in one place for 5,000 years and they listen. Huh? With sweaty palms. Of course they communicate. Fungi. They don't stop communicating. We think we communicate. You want to hear a shear, go visit fungi. And you know what type of webs they have under earth? You know what type of, you think the train station, you think the railway tracks are sophisticated. You look at the fungi tunnels. It's half, the whole planet is connected. Sadna de arechadu. Sadna de arechadu. In the fungi you see it.
Yeah, they use the fungi system to figure out the subway system.
Really?
Yeah.
Das habe ich nicht gewusst. They use the fungi system to figure out the subway system? That I didn't know. Okay, you see people are getting smarter. Fungi is unbelievable. Fungi is unbelievable. It's the Kiyum Habriya. So, Yishabach Masacha, who knew about fungi? Who knew about fungi? Stama kahakta thing on your foot, you know, you ever get fungus on your foot and it itches a whole day. That's what people know about fungi. Yeah, especially on your foot. Huh? Yeah, you think of the mikveh. They tell you don't go to the mikveh because of the fungus. That's as far as the education about fungus begins and ends. What's the point here? The point here is there's a very powerful message here. Every reality, you always have to ask, what's the paroiches producing this reality? You understand? Always. What's the curtain that's filtering the information? Because if I can't do that, there's no communication. I'm behind one curtain, you're behind another curtain, and we're talking. What I'm not hearing what you're saying, you're not hearing what I'm saying. Why? The words are being filtered through my curtain, which creates a different reaction, a different sensitivity, a different perception. If we go beyond curtains, it's all one. Kodesh HaKadoshim. But we live in a world of curtains. The Beis HaMikdash had curtains. Because the Beis HaMikdash is a model of the world, and a model of all the world, and the flow of divinity, from Ruchni to Gashmi, from Ayin to Yesh, is always HaMechadesh. HaMechadesh doesn't mean he's always doing something new that he never did. HaMechadesh means he's always creating a new light, because the Yesh, Lagabe, the Ayin is new. It's a Ur Shalto, it's a different Ur. And it doesn't happen once. Every level needs a new Ur to make that level, to make that world. In the world of Bria, this is reality. The world of this is reality. We live in the world of Asiya. This, we know what reality is. And each person has a different perception. Two people could be in the same table, around the same table, but they inhabit a different world. Right? Just like when you're in a bad mood. You could be in the happiest place, but you're miserable. You're in a good mood, you could be in the most miserable place, but you're happy, you know? You know what I mean? You don't know what I mean? The first part, you certainly know what I mean, no? So what's pshat? What is it? What is it? It's the messages I'm hearing. It's the world I live in. Which world do I live in? This is the beginning of the explanation. Be'ezer Hashem will continue on Thursday morning, 8 o'clock, because they're davening here. So 8 o'clock Thursday morning. Have a wonderful day. So now you want to know, which world should we be in? Well, we were put into this world. We weren't put into Kodesh HaKadoshim. So that means this is the world we have to be in. But this Maimer is going to develop. This is just the beginning. It's going to become a little more intricate. Well, who's this nothing? Hashem? Why is Hashem called nothing?
I did that.
So why is it called Meh? It should be Yesh Meh HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not Yesh Meh Ayin. It says Mimcha HaKoil. The Pasuk says Ki Mimcha HaKoil. It's not Ayin. So Balatanya is explaining what it means by Ayin. Ayin means more something than Yesh. Nothingness. Nothingness is no thing. It's not a thing. So it's everything. A thing can't be everything.
We only are impressed by things.
We only are impressed by things. Yeah, this is a thing. I can hold it. Exactly. No thing is ayin. Sorry, you don't exist. And my violin, there's no music.
Paradox.
That's everything. The moment you get that, that ayin is more reality than yesh. The moment you get it, you get it. That's the nekuda. Huh?
So before Hashem said Yehi Or was already the
Yehi Or is already the concretization of divine energy. All of Brias HaOlam is, right? Essentially, reality is infinity. We're walking on ayin. We are ayin. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as is. Infinite divinity. But the doors of perception are colored by many aparoiches.
We would see a malach, we would die. We would melt.
I see a malach every day. But even a malach is a tzimtzum. A malach is also a tzimtzum. I would put it differently. Not that we wouldn't be able to handle it. The definition of self would completely be altered. The death of ego. The death of ego.
Therefore, we would cease to exist.
The truth is, the whole of Chassidus is to integrate that truth into the yesh. I mean, he'll say later in the Maimer.
Actually, what this lady wrote at the beginning, so that every parsa is actually its own words and its own vocabulary.
Yeah.
Until we develop that vocabulary, you cannot even see that.
Yes. Very well. Every parsa has its own vocabulary, and you have to develop it to communicate to something outside of that parsa. Yeah.
Because that's why she's studying.
It's different language. If I can't talk to a cat in the same way I speak to a person. But there's a language to talk to a cat. There's a language right?
Which has to be developed.
And you have to develop
Every
it.
time you will see.
You don't talk to a baby, lahavdil, you don't talk to a baby the way you talk to an adult.
So the ayin is the ayin is a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's it. It's the Hashem before he decided to make the world.
And after. Hashem didn't, and after.
Lo shanisi.
Lo shanisi.
In the Middle Ages, there were some people understood the dangers of germs. A lot of midwives knew more than the Catholic Church burned them as witches.
The world develops. There's a process. The Zohar says, no? And we still don't know much.
I said Baal Shem Tov was nifter
1760.
and that's the year of beginning of Industrial Revolution.
I thought it was 1850.
No. Industrial Revolution began in 1960. In 1760, which is
In Great Britain, actually.
No, great. Actually, well,
1840 was already a whole new level.
America was the
18.
So the Balatanya, Dafka lived, he was at the beginning of Industrial Revolution, he was 15. So he was, Mamish was living that time.
If it began at 1850.
No, the Balatanya was born 1745. He passed away 1812. 1812.
So he Mamish lived at the
Cusp.
at the burst.
And another interesting thing is that came together with the Enlightenment. The whole Enlightenment came together with that.
No.
The end early 1700s. Last year. No, you're talking about Renaissance. Renaissance. It's a difference. There's Renaissance and there's Enlightenment.
What's the difference? What was it like?
It's completely different kufa.
Leonardo da Vinci was supposed to.
Yeah, of course.
Wasn't Leonardo
In other
da Vinci
words,
the
if
most
the
enlightened person?
industrial
Nobody-
Yeah.
It means that
Who was smarter?
Yes.
But the point here is that we did get
Yes. And the Zohar says, and this is a very important limit, that the whole scientific revolution is not a contradiction to Yiddishkeit. Verkehrt. It allows the world to reach its tikkun. People who are afraid of science don't missing the whole point. The more you get into the truth of science, I'm not talking about fake science, real science, the more you see the Achdus Habriya. There's not a nekuda in science today that doesn't testify that everything is Ein Sof. Everything is one. The string theory is what they're searching for, right? The ultimate nekuda. The unifying, to unify everything. They used to think, that the whole world was made up of so many diverse, extreme, endless elements. The closer you get, you see that ultimately the building blocks are the same. In other words, whoever is responsible was using the same dictionary.
The same laboratory.
He had the same laboratory, the same store.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.